You are listening to the Intelligent Vocalist Podcast, episode 146.
Welcome to The Intelligent Vocalist with John Henny. This is the podcast dedicated to help you be a smarter, better, more informed singer. And now, your host for The Intelligent Vocalist, John Henny.
Hey there, this is John Henny. Welcome back to another episode of The Intelligent Vocalist. I do so appreciate you spending this precious listening time with me. All right, first podcast of the new year. I am here and excited for another year of podcasting. Last year, I went from, I think it was an episode a week. I was pretty religious by that point, by last year, but I've moved it to 2 episodes a week, and I intend on keeping that in the new year. Other things that I have planned, I am looking at creating some online course study for beginning singers and maybe expanding into a larger online singing project. We shall see. I plan on doing more YouTube videos. Those have actually been quite rewarding. It's now that I've jumped back into it, and admittedly, doing the Voice Teacher Reacts video, you get a bigger audience, and it's not all singers, but managed to get about 1 million views in the first 5 weeks of doing that. So those are certainly encouraging numbers. Have managed to steel myself against the trolls at first, even though I knew they were coming. At first, it's like a kick in the head, and you go, wow. But after you've been punched a few times, you get used to it. So I'm over that. Don't really shake me anymore, so we'll be doing more of those. And I've said it time and time again on this podcast, if you're going to put yourself out there, you're going to take some hits. And the only way to get used to taking the hits is to get hit. I mean, there's no way to learn to be a boxer if you're afraid of taking a punch. And after a few punches, you get used to it. I myself don't box, so I would be rather frightened of taking a punch to the head. I always thought it'd be a great way to get in shape, but I just don't need my brain scrambled. I'm hanging on to what I have left. Don't need those jiggled around in my head. But today I want to go back to a topic that I've covered before, but I want to talk to those singers who really struggle with the vocal break. Now, the vocal break is that area between your lower register, what's often called the chest voice, and your upper register, what's often called the head voice, although not head voice in a classical female way, but more of a contemporary definition. It connects to your chest voice in a way that is seamless, but there is an area of instability the voice goes through in shifting from a chest dominant register to more of a head dominant register. Or some people will talk about switching a mode. There's different ways to describe it, but essentially, you're going from the vocal folds being in a fatter condition, and there's more surface contact on the vocal folds. They're short and fat. And then what happens is they begin to stretch for pitch like stretching a rubber band. They become long and thin, and then the contact on the vocal folds is not as intense. There's not as much surface contact. So it's very easy to go into a lighter condition, and people will feel this as a flip, a break. And the other thing that's happening, there's an acoustic transition. You're going from your throat resonator primarily. I'll say this again. It's an oversimplification, but it works for our purposes. Your sound waves are being boosted in the resonance tube that's your throat and your mouth, little spillover into the nasal cavity, but we don't really hear that in a finished sound unless we're specifically making a nasal sound. And these two cavities will be boosting different parts of the sound wave. And in the lower notes, your lower register, it's boosting more in the throat. More of the energy is happening there, the acoustic reinforcement. And as you go higher, that will switch over to the mouth. Now, the singer will usually desperately try to hold on to that lower register or to that lower resonator. And when we do that, what progressively happens is we go further and further into a shout condition, and we really start to strain. So we have the vocal folds themselves physically wanting to go to that thinner condition, and that causes us to break. As well as if we don't get that smooth acoustic handover, that causes us to break. And as singers, we seem to fear breaking and cracking more than shouting. But shouting is where most of the damage is done. It doesn't sound good, creates a lot of stress on the vocal cords. We're utilizing a lot of muscle. We're pushing a lot of air because everything's starting to clamp down. We're usually singing flat at that point. The vocal cords are being slammed together and they can become inflamed. You can ultimately get bruising and nodules and all kinds of terrible things. These little polyp on them like a fluid-filled blister. It's just what we don't want to do. But some voices are stubborn, and some voices will really, really strain with this. And it tends to be more common in male voices than female voices. One of the primary reasons for that is the male voice has more chest register, if you will. There's more lower register in the male voice. And this transition to the upper register happens later in the voice. So the vocal folds are under more tension for pitch. I think guys in general tend to muscle things more. We guys tend to think brute force somehow fixes things, and it rarely does. But that doesn't stop us from trying. Women seem to have more kinesthetic awareness than men, seem to be more in tune with what they're feeling, with their bodies. They tend to approach things in a more reasoned manner sometimes. And also, the female voice, you hit that area of transition sooner, so the chords are under less tension. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it tends to be a bit easier for women. But men, when you combine the transition happening later with the tendency to muscle, not being always as in tune with our nervous systems as we should be, you will get situations where the voice is just locking up. And this sometimes requires a different approach. Some voices rise like water, in that the issues of the voice will tend to improve across the range, and it will say come in chunks. It's like maybe the lower register is working and the transition's not working well, but then it all starts to come in kind of all together, and that also starts to boost the upper transition, and it tends to be a little more holistic. Whereas other voices, they come in note by note, half step by half step, and these voices really have to work for each bit of ground that they gain. These voices tend to be bigger voices, a little more robust, a little stronger, so the urge to muscle up is greater. And therefore, this break will be incredibly stubborn and hard to fix. And a lot of online training programs are working with voices or focused on voices that are fixing themselves a little more holistically. And the scales will tend to be longer scales and working your whole register. And it's not that difficult voices shouldn't be doing that, but when you do a longer scale, when you're doing a scale that's an octave and a half or 2 octaves, you're not going to really fix your break that way. You can work on releasing or letting go of the muscle, but it's going to flip. And it's not that you shouldn't be doing that, because you do want to stretch everything and be expanding your range on the top, even if it's light. But when it comes time to really putting the voice together and really sewing up that break in the voice, you may have to take more of a single note approach. And what I suggest is really working the upper chest area. And that's the area just below the break. And for men, that'll start on about the B flat below middle C. For women, that will start around the E flat above middle C. And even though these notes aren't really what people will call in their mix or in their transition, there is a bit of an acoustic shift there. And there's a noticeable acoustic shift in that you do have to take a little bit of control. Men, if they're not really watching it, will start to crack. They can start to crack on that middle C, and women can start to have issues on the F above middle C. And that really confused me, because I would have issues on the middle C or the D flat half step above and think, wait a minute, I'm still in my chest voice. Why am I having these issues? Well, there's a little shift in what I call the upper chest. And I have to watch the vowel. I have to narrow the vowel ever so slightly. So if the vowel is ah, I have to take it a shade to If it's I got to take a little bit to And when I do that, I'll feel a little lift in the resonance. Now, this lift, these are misleading sensations. I've heard it called, I got this from Ken Bozeman, false kinesthesia. But these false feelings, the voice going up into the head and lifting behind the soft palate and doing all this, that's not what the sound waves are doing. They're not suddenly taking this different trajectory, but the way our body is absorbing the different rates of vibration and the parts of the sound wave that are being boosted definitely changes our sensations. And in that upper chest, there's enough of a shift of sensation that you can begin to feel what it's like to properly go into your transition, where you really experience an intense shift of sensation going from your lower to upper register, or your chest voice to your mix to your head voice. And this can be a really good clue and really instructive. And so I would just spend time in that upper chest voice for men, working on the B flat to maybe the D or E flat above middle C. For women, working on the E flat above middle C to the G or A flat above middle C. And really spending time in there and repeating those notes and sustaining on those notes and trying different vowels and really getting those dialed in. And if you're a male and that D above middle C starts working and then the E flat starts to work, then you're going to really feel the lift into the E and then the F. And then there's going to be another lift into that F sharp. And I would just work those step by step. I wouldn't get the D working and then expect to sing the F sharp above it right away. I would really focus going note by note. Take your time. Have some patience. Still warm up, and you can do different exercises and maybe light vocalizations up through that area. But take it easy. When you're singing full voice. And then you can also work on the notes above the break, because some singers, they'll have that break, and then when they get into their head voice, the voice will start to catch on again and get your wheels again. You've gotten over that area of instability. And you know what that lighter feeling feels like. Well, then start from that lighter feeling and work your way down into that vocal break. For men, the vocal break is traditionally from about D4, that's the D above middle C, to about G4, the G above middle C. For women, it can be around that G4 to the C sharp or D above it. It's different for each voice, a little different on each vowel, but smack dab in the middle is going to be F to F sharp above middle C for men, and usually B flat to B above middle C for women. And those notes, a lot of men will really have that F, and then the F sharp is trouble. A lot of women will be really solid on that B flat, but that B and C above it are problematic. So you just want to hit those break areas from both directions. Give yourself some time. Don't lose patience. That's my best advice in this. Just get your mindset. Be kind to yourself. Know that it's going to take some time. Know that it's going to take some work. For goodness sakes, don't keep doing what hasn't been working. And don't get stuck if you're working on an online course and there's an exercise that isn't working for you. Don't stop doing that exercise for a while. Don't reinforce the bad habits. Kind of change things up. Be a little more patient and do some really focused work in there. And I promise you, this break can be overcome. Now, it's a lifetime job keeping this break in shape. And when you take time off from singing, that's usually the area that initially suffers. We have to reawaken those coordinations. But you can get better at this. I do promise you. Hey, if you want to know more about me, please check out my website, johnhenny.com. I actually just redesigned it so you can sit there and make choices if you want help with your singing, and there are different options there. Or you can click on that you'd like to become a voice teacher, and there are different paths that'll take you on the website and show you resources. I have everything from full courses to very inexpensive courses to courses that are free. So please go there, check it out. My newest course is Boldly Belting, which teaches you how to belt. And I've created these original songs that help with the transition from doing exercises to the songs of your choice. They're these little short, what I call lyricizes. And people are really enjoying that course. You can go to boldlybelting.com to check that out. And until next time, to better singing. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.